was an unlikely destination for West Coast chips. The small island off the Nanaimo waterfront had very little more to offer than a picnic site and a nice place to swim. But its popularity was phenomenal. At times there were as many as 12,000 people there in a day. Before it was discovered by tourists, the island had a coal mine, a quarry, and a herring plant. But after the Second World War, it quietly became provincial parkland. Now Patti reports that some people want to take Newcastle Island back to her former glory days.
A shakedown cruise for the Newcastle Spirit, one of 3 ferries preparing to carry passengers to Newcastle Island this summer. Captain Bob Bernard bought the new 40-passenger vessel in anticipation of a busy tourist year for the island local promoters call Nanaimo's best-kept secret. He carried 25,000 people last year, a bumper year for his service, but nothing like the island's heyday. In the 1930s, Newcastle Island was classed as a cruise ship resort by its owners, Canadian Pacific. It was a mecca for weekend refugees from the city who took advantage of CP's $1.50 round-trip fare from Vancouver to Newcastle Island for a day of fun in the sun. In those days, CP cruise ships deposited as many as 12,000 people on the island in a single day. For 10 years, the Princess Victoria remained moored at the island dock as a floating hotel. Group picnics were very popular with people who strolled up the Newcastle Island dock to dine and dance to big band music at the island's pavilion. The dock is still there, quiet in the off-season, and so is the pavilion. But it wasn't quiet last summer when dances were reintroduced to the restored building for the first time in decades. And for members of the Newcastle Island Pavilion Society, that's just the first step.
Because we are a part of the island and interested in attracting people to the island as a whole, we would like to assist the provincial parks people in their efforts to bring back to life some of the other historical aspects of the island.
The provincial government, which operates Newcastle Island as a marine park, has already built a trail through the remains of an old quarry site on the island. At the turn of the century, its sandstone was sent as far south as San Francisco. In the 30s, it was used to make giant pulp stones that ground logs into wood chips. Some of them still remain, and the Pavilion Society wants similar monuments to mark the island's other former industries, like the herring saltery, operated by Japanese workers who were all sent to internment camps with the outbreak of World War II. There was once a coal mine and several native villages on the island. Routledge would like their former sites marked so hikers on the island's extensive trails would see more than just wildlife. He'd also like to see a return of the ships that put the island on the map in the first place.
The CPR cruise ship resort era was a very big part of it, and I think a facility that would allow those boats to be able to come and visit again would bring quite a bit of life back to the island and to the community in terms of attracting visitors to our area.
That, of course, would mean the secret would be out on Newcastle Island. It would be just like the 30s again, and that's just what the Pavilion Society wants.
I've never been on Newcastle Island. I know it's off Nanaimo. Here's Jimmy Rutledge, who's trying a fancy operation. Tell me about it, Jimmy.
Well, it's not that fancy. It's kind of a secret, really. We've been trying to keep it under wraps, but basically Newcastle Island's been around for a long time. It goes back to the 1850s. It actually predates a lot of the Vancouver development. But in a nutshell, it's a place where people have been having fun for about 100 years.
The first recreational island in British Columbia. It's just off Nanaimo. Is it developed or is it all provincial park?
Well, it is a provincial marine park, and they've preserved it beautifully for the last 20 years. But it's a situation where there's been basically 6 major industries on the island, and it's always it's been kept originally and
as it was.
As it was.
This is an old CPR pamphlet. It cost you $1.50 to get to Newcastle Island.
$1.50 return in the 1930s would take you over for a day, and
that was from Vancouver.
From Vancouver. That was back in the days when people didn't have the mobility and the cars.
And they had pavilions, tea gardens, outdoor checkerboard, bandstand, playing fields, horseshoe pits, switches, children's playgrounds, racetracks, picnic tables, wading pools, sandpits, first aid station, high swings and treats, bleachers, swim fort, swimming area, walk, bathhouse, children's beach, quarry and park warden's house. Are any of the old developments left?
Yes, as a matter of fact, the bulk of the CPR resort era facilities, which the CPR established during the 30s, are there. The dance pavilion, which is the facility that our society is responsible for, was restored with some help from the province and the government of Canada, and we've been putting a program together to be able to have weddings and banquets and...
And you're a non-profit society?
That's right. We're trying to basically develop it so the...
Weren't there mines on Newcastle Island at one time?
2 coal mines, the Douglas mine and the Fitzwilliam mine, took coal out of there since 1850.
And there's still, the mines are still there, of course,
yes.
Obviously.
Yeah, and as well there's a sandstone quarry.
Is this part of your tourist attraction program?
Very much so. I mean, how many cities have a park, a provincial park, right in the midst of their harbour? Nanaimo is quite an attraction that way.
Well, how do you get to Newcastle Island?
Well, the ferries that the BC government run take you over to Nanaimo, and then we have shuttle service to the island.
And that's what I'm talking about, you know, shuttle service in small boats.
That's right.
Newcastle Island. You can't take cars off.
No, we'd like to make the whole experience start from the minute you leave the shore.
Is it an attempted recreation of the 30s?
Well, that aspect of it is, you know, because that was such a thriving industry back in the 30s, there was a number of operations. BC steamships took people to Bowen Island, and there was another group that took them to Belcarra Park.
Back to you, though. What have you had?
1, 2, 3, go!